We're getting serious, friends. So, um, this is a story. Obviously it's true. I will give you the trigger warning right here up front. This is a mysterious death case that was actually ruled as a this is a mysterious death that was ruled as a suicide by the investigators. But the family has very conflicting feelings about it because there are some very suspicious circumstances that they have kind of had to fill in the gaps and like gather the evidence for, because law enforcement was pretty like cut and dry, like, okay, this is what this is, we're done here, like, moving on, see you later, case closed, good night. um It takes place in suspicious death of a 12-year-old boy in Virginia in April 2022. So it's very recent. And there is a Facebook page because they're not satisfied with law enforcement's attempts so far and the way that they have determined the case and just are content to move on. Um, so they have a Facebook group where they've shared all of their like evidence, facts, information, things that they've gathered or noticed that were not done by police. The Facebook group is called What Happened to Sean? And it was Sean Doherty. There was conflicting reports. I'm just gonna. Sean gets home from school, and his mom is rushing home to pick up the grandmother who was babysitting the 2-year-old to take the grandmother to a doctor's appointment. So the mom asks Sean if he will stay home and babysit his younger brother for like an hour while they go to this doctor's appointment. They're not supposed to be gone long at all. So they leave for the doctor's appointment and his mom calls him from the car like several times. There's several phone calls from her in the car or after she's left, like trying to talk to Sean before he stops communicating with anyone at all. So he comes home from school and he does his homework and submits it online, and everything seems normal. And so he's on the phone with his mom, and his mom's, your brother has been asleep for like 2 hours already, and if he sleeps any longer, like he's not gonna get any sleep tonight. So could you like wake him up and hang out with him a little bit instead? And Sean agrees, and his mom knew that he was excited to play Fortnite after he finished his homework for the day because he's a responsible kid and, gamer kid. So he his mom says, "Why don't you get your brother and like go up to your room and take him with you while you play Fortnite?" And he's super excited about this. So he's all like, "Yeah, I could get him set up with the iPad and blah, blah, blah. Like, that sounds great. Like, I'll get it all set up and everything will be perfect." So his mom tells him, like, where the iPad is because it's plugged in somewhere, and is all like, "Okay, cool, go get set up with your brother, whatever." So what they think happened is that was his chore was to take out the trash. So he like emptied the upstairs trash cans and brought the bags downstairs and was about to take out the kitchen trash, but he never got farther than that. Like they find the trash and everything like still downstairs, even his shoes. Um so they also found a bowl on the counter with like a peach in it, a canned peach, because that was his like favorite after school snack. He had pulled a peach out of the fridge to have a snack after he took the garbage out. His family thinks that like his alarm went off to take the garbage to do his chore, to take the garbage out. Like that's how responsible this kid is that he had an alarm on his phone to take out the trash to make sure he did his chore. And he had already done his homework. So he's like, by all accounts, a very like responsible child. So he goes to take out the trash, is seems to be interrupted like mid snack, mid chore, all of that, you know, like normal after school stuff. And then after that conversation with his mom about setting his brother up with the iPad, nobody talks to him again for the rest of the evening. And he at this point he's been at home for like 2 hours by himself with his younger brother. And his mom and grandma did take longer than they thought they were going to originally, but it wasn't an excessive amount of time. And he was 12 years old. He was in the 6th grade. He was obviously a responsible kid. Like, he was doing his chores, he was doing his homework, he was excited to play games with his friends. And they also mentioned that the family had just gotten back from a Disney cruise for spring break. This is the case of the suspicious death of a 12-year-old boy named Sean, who it was labeled by the cops as a suicide. But the circumstances were very strange, and the family has since come out and started a Facebook group saying that they're not super happy with the way that like the investigation was handled. They thought that like it should have been looked into more than it was. So they just had a lot of feelings and issues. They also, it should be noted that they live in a really small town. Like, I don't even think it's technically a town. I think it's one of those incorporated areas with a population of like 300 people. So it's not unheard of for cases like this in small towns just to not go quite as expected, because maybe the police are inexperienced. They don't necessarily handle that type of crime like all that often, maybe once a year or something like that. So it can be really difficult in those types of situations. But in this one, the family felt that the police were really quick to come to their conclusion and decide not to look into it any further. So they started the Facebook group with all the like evidence that they have collected and stuff that they thought was suspicious or worth looking into. So a 12-year-old boy gets home from school. His name is Sean. He's supposed to be babysitting his 2-year-old brother. He's already finished his homework, went to get a snack in the kitchen. He was, it looked like, to be in the middle of doing his chore, which was to take out the trash like from upstairs and in the kitchen downstairs. So he had gone upstairs and taken the bags of trash from upstairs and brought them downstairs, and was like in the process of taking the one out downstairs, but he never actually took the trash out. It was still there when the cops and the family returned to the home. And they also found his shoes right by the trash can, and the family noted that he absolutely hated being barefoot. They were the opposite of a no shoes in the house family. They were a shoes on your feet all the time kind of crew, I suppose. He didn't have shoes on when they found him, even though he was outside. But the family made it very clear that he is not down to be barefoot. Like, he's not into it. He doesn't like it. Super anti. So he was obviously like doing things that have some sort of like future in mind, you know, like you got a snack out, you were going to continue fulfilling your chores. He also like he had, I think, 3 different conversations with his mom within the first like 30 minutes that he was home, because the last conversation he had with his mom was that like he had to wake his brother up from a nap because he was sleeping when Sean got home, but they didn't want him to like stay awake all night. So his mom called and said, "Hey, can you wake your brother up instead and like bring him upstairs with you while you're playing video games?" So Sean says, "Yeah, great. Like I'll get him set up with the iPad. I'll bring him up to my room. This will be perfect." And his mom even tells him like where the iPad is, like on a charger somewhere. And after that phone conversation, nobody talks to Sean again. Um so he has only been at home for like 2 hours by himself. And his older sister, who I think was high school age probably, um, she's coming home from like a tennis meet, and she is waiting to be like, she's in a rush. She's getting picked up by her boyfriend's mom because they're going somewhere. Um, so she gets home and the door's unlocked and I mean, the door is locked, but nobody is answering. So she is super confused and calls her mom and is like, "Hey, like what's going on? Why isn't anybody home? Why won't anyone open the door and let me in?" So their mom says, "Oh, Sean must be upstairs like playing games. Don't worry, like he should be home. Just call him or whatever." Um so she his sister goes she calls him twice and she texts him a handful of times and he doesn't respond. So she goes to go around the back of the house and see if she can get in through the back door because she didn't have a house key. I guess. I don't know. Someone was supposed to be home. She didn't have all her stuff that day. I don't know. So she goes around back to try to get into the house, but she finds her brother in the backyard hanging from the swing set in a very awkward position. Like he has a bag over his head. He has his arms belted to his waist, like tied down to his waist with a belt, so tight that it cut off the circulation in his hands. And they said that he was so close to the ground that he could have stood up like at any moment. So it felt like a staged suicide to the family. There was also a chair nearby that was not flipped over, even though if you stand on a chair to try and hang yourself, generally the chair gets knocked over. But the chair was like super too far away for him to have used it, and it wasn't knocked over. It was just like placed out there. And they just in the autopsy report they describe the rope, tongue twister, shoelace like string, because apparently the the bag that was over his head, was the family said it was a motorcycle bag and that the string was attached to it. So the picture in my mind is, okay, you know the dust covers that you get when you buy a fancy purse? The oh, it's so suspicious. And I literally have not been able to stop thinking about it because there's just literally too many things that are super weird. So the string was attached to the bag. And they said it was a motorcycle bag. So I feel like it was probably like a dust cover bag that comes with something that you buy, the motorcycle helmet in this case, and it was just like the drawstring that's attached to the like little branded bag that they send to you with your helmet or your purse or whatever it is. So like that's what I'm picturing that it was in my head, because they just describe it in the autopsy as a shoelace like string, and the family were the ones who said it's a motorcycle bag and that it was attached to the bag that was covering his head. Also, the his hands were bound so tight it cut the circulation off, and excuse me, but I don't know how you expect a child to first of all do that to themselves alone, and then to put a bag over their head. Or did you put the bag over your head and then tie your hands? And there's just so much of it that doesn't make sense to me. So, and that's it's not even all of it. You guys, that's not even the end. It's not even the end. Um so the autopsy also said that the rope was the like marks on his neck were like kind of by his ears and on his chin, because the rope was like around his chin. And so it wasn't even like around his neck, like it had actually like even suffocated him or choked him. It was like a crudely, it was like trying to come off of his head, like somebody were trying to pull the bag off of his head. um so also his feet were completely clean, even though he didn't have shoes on. And they had said earlier that he was like a super freak about, okay, not a super freak, that's rude. He was just like very particular about not being barefoot. And the family also said that it was in April, so it was in the middle of spring, and the backyard was super like dusty and muddy. So even if he like had walked outside to the swing set from the house, you wouldn't have been able to like, it's not possible that your feet would be clean unless you like also brought a towel out to wipe your feet off before you did this. But then what, it just doesn't make sense. um so the also in the notes from the autopsy, the coroner said that when he arrived there were no marks on his wrists from where they were tied down at his sides, but the mom accompanied the ambulance to the hospital when they first came and picked him up, and she took a photo and she personally saw the marks on his wrist from it. So that's an incongruency. The mom also realized when she was at the emergency room or wherever they transported him to, that he was not wearing his own clothes, but he was dressed in his stepdad's clothes, like a dress shirt and pants and even his stepdad's underwear. So he wasn't wearing any of his own clothing. He was dressed fully in his stepdad's clothes. His stepdad was with one of the other children off doing something. I'm not super sure what it was, but both of the parents, the mom and his stepdad, are, I believe, in the Air Force. They're definitely in the military for sure. And they live in Virginia. And the family was even getting ready to, like, they've sold the house since this has happened because they're moving to the Pentagon for work. So I don't have any suspicion on the stepdad. I do think it's a very weird detail that he was completely dressed in his stepdad's clothes and not his own clothes. The family, even later, they found his underwear upstairs in the master bedroom. They cannot find his shirt. like the t-shirt or the shorts that he was wearing that day, and they know what outfit he was wearing to school because he had to take a selfie to submit his homework online. So he took a photo of himself with his homework and submitted it probably through like Blackboard or something, um, to show that he did his homework that day. So they knew what he was wearing, but they cannot find, they found like the sweater and the flannel he was wearing, but they can't find the shorts or the shirt that he was wearing. And they also can't find one of his glasses lenses. So that was another thing pointed out by the family where they were like, we just don't think that he could have done this himself because he also didn't have his glasses on and he could not see without his glasses. So just like so many strange details. And the family said that like they had even found like later after the police had investigated the home and like wrapped everything up and left, the family found a like a palm print on one of the windows that seemed to be male because I think the mom was the one adding the information and she had said like, oh, and it was bigger than my hand. um I think that was partly her trying to be like, it wasn't me, it wasn't someone in the family, like we think this should be printed or whatever. And the police also said that they had no fingerprints that had found. um and there were just a lot of things the family felt that they like, the family collected his underwear themselves when they found it that night when the police had told them like, it's all clear, you can go back to your house. They found the underwear upstairs, and the parents found it in their master bedroom and like put it in a bag and said, oh, we need to submit this to the police. So there's just a lot of things that weren't done that felt like they should have been done. And the police force has also come out after the fact and said that like they did a proper investigation and that they looked into everything, and the family was very upset about this. And because they came out and they were saying like, we're just asking for a second opinion, shouldn't we be entitled to that? We just want another agency to look into this because we feel like maybe you don't have the right experience for it, or you're clouded by this opinion that you've already this conclusion you've already come to. I and then the mom, so after she realizes he's not in his own clothes, she she calls the crew back at the house, the various family members that are now there and the investigators, to tell them like, "Oh my god, he's not wearing his own clothes. Could there be somebody in the house still?" So they check out the house, but they don't find anything. Um and or maybe I don't know if it was before the mom left with the body of Sean or if it was after, but they found the 2-year old, like, I'm assuming in the living room in on a chair underneath a pile of laundry. So in my head, I'm picturing like a lazy boy with a big pile of clothes on it that hasn't been put away because I think there were at least like 4 children living in the house. So I'm sure that family had a ton of laundry. Um, but they found the youngest child, like underneath this pile of laundry, and the mom said he was like super limp and like acting really weird. And they were talking to the son later, the 2-year old, and he told them that a friend had come over and was punching his brother. And I mean, granted, like this is a 2-year old's account, but I think it's an important detail and it's something that shouldn't be overlooked. And I think there have been a lot of cases where young children are asked to play like a crucial role in filling in the gaps of a story, even if it is just saying like there was a person here, even if all they can give is like it's a man or a woman. I uh, at least that's an old SVU trope that I would like to believe is true, that like cops listen to children at least a little bit, hopefully. But I am not the greatest live storyteller. If you also, though, cannot stop thinking about this, because I literally cannot. There are just so many weird things that just don't make sense, that don't seem right. Um, I definitely encourage you to check out this podcast episode by Going West. The Facebook group, I believe, is also called What Happened to Sean. If you want to check it out, I feel so bad for this family, and the fact that like they felt that they weren't being heard by the police during the investigation, because they interviewed the sister after, because she was the one that found her brother, and she was saying, like, he was a happy kid, like we had just gone to Disneyland, like he and his mom literally had just renewed his passport so they could go on another Disney cruise. Like, this kid had things he was looking forward to. He had friends. His sister had even said like he had one issue with bullying at school, but it had resolved itself and was no longer an issue. So my heart really hurts for this family, and my logic brain just cannot stop turning and trying to shove all of these like misshapen, super sus pieces together. Um, yeah. So I thought I would share with you, friends. I hope you enjoy. I really feel for the family. I cannot stop thinking about it. I just want to know what's going on. What happened? What happened? Just tell me. Somebody tell me, please. Sorry if any of you are now tormented. I just couldn't stop.